Good evening, everyone. Glad you could join us today for our panel discussion, Women in Science, Our Journey, to mark this very special day, the International Day for Women and Girls in Science. The past week, some of you may have had the opportunity to watch the film Picture a Scientist that delves into the struggles women in science face. While the film discusses the context of North America, these experiences happen all over the world, and importantly, not just in science, but in all industries. We want to use this opportunity to celebrate this day, to celebrate the positiveness by hearing from women who have braved these experiences or even still braving these experiences to share with us their journeys and perhaps offer advice to the future generations of women in science in our audience today. Such heroes I encounter every day. The beautiful ladies I teach, graduate students juggling family and research, and my colleagues who juggle multiple roles and still share the passion for science. Let's celebrate us. In the words of the mathematician Émilie de Châtelet, let us choose for ourselves our path in life and let us try to strew that path with flowers. I will now hand it over to Professor Cecile Larue, who will be facilitating the panel today. Cecile is an assistant teaching professor in organization and behavior at Carnegie Mellon University, Qatar. Cecile, all yours.
Thank you so much, Annette. What a wonderful welcome to a very, very important conversation that we're having tonight. I was thinking today, it is truly a wonderful privilege to be having this moment to talk about matters that we all feel very deep and close to. And this is wonderful that we can be surrounded by dynamic panelists who can share their stories and wonderful attendees who will certainly hear themselves in some of the stories that we will hear tonight. So, thank you everyone for joining us, and thank you for this fantastic opportunity, Annette, for creating this space that we can continue to celebrate the victories thus far and continue to carve the path forward. So, let us tell you a little bit more about our plan for tonight. We have a very exciting program for you, and our panelists have been excited to share with us what they're going to talk about tonight. So, first of all, we're going to introduce you to these dynamic women, and you're going to hear a little bit more about them, not only in terms of their distinguished roles, but you'll really discover that they are truly human and truly multifaceted. We will then move on to hear from their unique journeys. Each of them will tell you a little bit more about what their journey was into science. Some highlights, perhaps some lowlights, some struggles, some victories, some institutions and countries they were part of, some teams perhaps they were part of, some mentors that they had or perhaps didn't have. But they're going to share their journeys, and I encourage you to open up your hearts and your minds to hear what they have to share. And then we will have our panel discussion. In our panel discussion, we will revisit a couple of topics specifically related to this area of how we can increase awareness of the representation of female participants and females in our scientific industry. So, we're going to ask a couple of the panelists to address some of these important questions for us. At the end, we will have a question and answer time. So, you're very welcome throughout our presentation to type your question in the Q&A. That is little tab that you will find at the bottom of your toolbar, and you can type your question there and we will respond at the end of our time together tonight. So, without any further ado, we would like to introduce you to our panelists. We're going to start with our first panelist, and I'm just going to use their first names so that you'll see how we are all similar and how we are all uniquely different. Our first panelist, who will just briefly tell you about herself, is Selma. Selma, over to you.
Hi, Cecile. Thank you very much, and good evening, everyone. So yes, I'm Selma, and I'm a teaching professor in information systems and the Senior Associate Dean for Education at Carnegie Mellon University in Qatar. The reference there, loves gazing at the stars, is a reference to my love for astronomy. I like looking at the stars and the constellations, and it just reminds me how the universe is fascinating and full of mysteries, and how us as scientists have so much more to enjoy and to discover. It's a world of infinite possibilities. So when I look at the stars at night, I see science, I see progress, and I see a world open to us of joy and science.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you for sharing that, Selma, and for opening our minds. I think when we're done with this session tonight, if we are certainly in this part of the world, we should all go out and have a look at the stars and think back of our conversation. Thank you for sharing that with us. Now, we're going to hear a little bit about Adviti. Adviti, please tell us more about yourself.
Hello, everyone. Good evening, and thank you, Cecile, for it's an honor to be on this panel. I'm Adviti. I'm a postdoctoral researcher at the Qatar Biomedical Research Institute at the Cancer Research Center, and my work is mainly focused on breast cancer biology. Apart from science, I love traveling, which is a little bit difficult at the moment, but nevertheless, I dream about it. I like being outdoors, and I love yoga. I think that helps me keep grounded and calm in a sometimes chaotic lifestyle in science.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. Thank you. And as we're all talking, you can hear that there are some tips that we'll hear from our, our panelists about what their secret was of how they have been navigating and staying energized and certainly grounded during their journeys. The next panelist that we'll hear from is Borbala. Borbala, please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hello, everyone. I'm Borbala or Bori, actually. I prefer to be called Bori because it's, somehow more colloquial, and I really like when people do, feel closer to me. Somehow Borbala for me is very, very, standoffish. I don't know why. It's my real name. Anyhow, I'm an assistant professor at Hamad bin Khalifa University at the College of Health and Life Sciences. I'm in the division of genomics and precision medicine, and I'm really enjoying my time here, and I'm really honored to be part of this panel. So thank you very much for the invite, Cecile and Danet. Oh, and my quotation there is that I'm really fascinated by sea creatures, which is very true. At some point, I think I thought I should have become a marine biologist, but all parts of biology are interesting for me.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you, Bori. We will certainly make sure that we refer to you as Bori as the night progresses. And also thank you for that personal touch, because we have to make sure that we own who we are and we're comfortable about how others address us as well. So thanks for sharing that with us. And yes, if we're not looking at the stars, maybe we need to be going down in the ocean. It's beautiful. What a wonderful world to discover down there. So, the next panelist that we're going to meet tonight is Maya. Maya, please tell us about yourself.
Thank you, Cecile. Howdy, everyone. My name is Maya. I'm a physics lab coordinator in the science program at Texas A&M University at Qatar. I'm also pursuing my PhD in biomedical engineering. When I was asked to share a fun fact, I wouldn't say I love books, right? Who doesn't? I picked to say I love collecting notepads and pens because it's slightly uncommon. And there's no way I can visit a bookstore and leave without buying new pens and notepads to try and use, especially in science.
That is wonderful, Maya. So when we run out, you have to make sure to tell us where your office is and which day you're on campus so we can come and visit you to get
You're
our
more than
collection of
welcome.
notepads and pens expanded. Wonderful. But there is something really beautiful about a notepad and a pen. And I also remember my journey of making so many notes across the years. And you discover your thoughts that you jotted down many years ago. It's lovely to see them. And as young scientists, that's certainly something very beautiful. I think that many of us have systems that work for us, and that's one that worked for me. So thanks for that reminder. We are now going to move on to Angela. Angela, please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Angela Ng, and I'm the Program Director of Student Engagement at Carnegie Mellon University in Qatar. The quote, "I love animals," refers to my love of animals, but also how I got started in the sciences. I've always loved animals. When I was really little and up until I had an internship in high school, I wanted to be a vet for dogs, or I've had this dream of being like a big animal vet. I worked one summer at like the Panda Conservatory in China. And it wasn't until I had my vet internship in high school that I realized I did not actually like the sight of blood. So I am a Carnegie Mellon alumni as well. And so I was admitted into the Mellon College of Science and was taking bio and chemistry classes, but I quickly switched over to the College of Engineering.
Wonderful, Angela. That's such a nice, inspiring story to hear that we have to discover our paths, and our path will find us as we go through life and just check in and see what do we really like and what don't we like. We are glad to see that your love for animals is still true and that you have little four-legged friends with you. So that's certainly something that you can still enjoy, even if, it's not with the side of blood, isn't it? So, everyone, this is our wonderful panelists. And as you can see, they're all unique and different, and they all bring a beautiful part of their journeys to us tonight. We're going to now ask each of them to tell us a little bit more about how was it for them to take this walk into science. What were their experiences? What did they go through? And perhaps this is an opportunity for you to really zoom in and hear what all of their journeys are about. Because together, these journeys weave together one big story of women in science. And that's the story we want to contribute to tonight, is how can we all make sure that the sciences is a more welcoming environment for women, and particularly our young women. So without any further ado, we're going to start by hearing from Selma, and she will tell us a little bit about her journey into science. Selma, over to you.
Thank you again, Cecile. So first, just a quick overview for just context. I grew up in Tunisia, and I went to Sweden every summer for the holidays. I have a degree. I have an engineering degree, industrial engineering, that I got in Tunisia, and then I moved to France to get a master and a PhD in industrial engineering, and then I had several faculty positions in France, in the Netherlands, in the UK, in Dubai, in the UAE, and then finally here in Qatar and I've been here since 2007. So you asked to see that we describe our journey to science and maybe focus on what really inspired us to pursue a career in science. And then I wanted to share, so I guess for many of us, it started very young. And so for me in high school, one thing back then in the system, the schooling system I was in, if one was smart and doing well, it was kind of expected that one would go to the math and science track. And so I kind of landed there without really choosing to choose science, to want to do science. So for me, really the inspiration came from outside the classroom. I got nominated to go spend the summer in a scientific camp, and it was astronomy. So again, back to the stars. And that's where I really discovered that, wow, I can do science and I can have fun. And science is fun. It's not just a discipline, and it's not grades and all of that thing. So that really got me also connected to a community of people who really were passionate about that. So the year after, in my senior year in high school, we had this astronomy club, and we were trying to build a telescope. We failed, to be honest, but we tried to build a telescope, and that's how I decided, okay, well, I think it's engineering for me, so I will go for engineering. And then I went to university for my engineering degree. And then over there, I think my inspiration came from the other women who were studying with me. So again, when you think science, you know, there aren't many women often studying. So we were a small group of women, and we supported each other, but we also competed. So it was sometimes a healthy competition, and sometimes not so healthy competition, which is I regret. And maybe we all know about these things that take place. And so in the end, it was really great that we stuck together. We're still friends now, and we all went in different ways. But that helped me keep up and continue, and then moving on for the master's and PhD in France. That's when really things shifted into now looking back, the importance of mentorship, and how my thesis supervisor was an amazing support for me to continue. And then moving on to work, getting also the support from some key people. Of course, not everything was great and rosy and such, and there were struggles, and there were moments where so you use the word low lights. Yeah, low lights, where the subtle kind, where you get hurt because you're not included in a conversation, or not invited to a meeting, and why are some people giving more attention to the same thing you say. And you start to think about it from a gender perspective, and then try not to think about it that way. So these things happen. It was great for me to come to CMU here, and that's where I really benefited from the support, incredible support of some women here at CMU in Pittsburgh, who really made me realize that we need to believe in ourselves, and we need to we need to believe that we can do it. And it's good when someone else tells you that and gives you the kick to continue. So that's all I wanted to share for now.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Salma. And it's so nice to hear all these stories, because even if we've worked together, there's many more stories that we're learning from each other. So storytelling is so helpful and powerful. And I will never look at a telescope without thinking of what you just shared. That's just lovely and fun. Thank you for that. So the next panelist that's going to share with us her journey is Adviti. Adviti, please tell us a little bit about your experience into science.
Well, as a kid, I never thought I would be a scientist. You know, I was always very focused on wanting to be a doctor, a physician, and that's what my mindset was as I went through school. And it was not until high school when you know, we were introduced to the concepts of genetics and molecular biology. That's when this whole new world was opened up to me, and that got me hooked. And I still remember one of the key people who helped me make this this change in my career decision was my biology teacher at school. And I think that's why educators at a young age are so important in choosing your career. And and she was one of the first people who saw that spark in me when we spoke about, you know, science. And that is what encouraged me. And I still remember her helping me in my high school project when I was doing a high school project on the inheritance patterns of hemophilia, which is a genetic disorder. And I was so excited about it. And she was like, oh, I think this is what is your calling, you know, you should pursue it. And that's when I picked to do a bachelor's degree in genetics and molecular biology. And I moved from home, which is in Oman, to the UK at the University of Sheffield. And I pursued my undergraduate and my master's degree there. And at Sheffield, we had fantastic educators as well. And again, they built such a strong foundation for science as a young student, you know, and really inspired us to pursue science further. And I was quite lucky to do my master's in industry. So I worked at a pharmaceutical company, AstraZeneca. And that's where I met my second inspiration in science. And this was another female mentor, Sarah Holt. She was an amazing scientist, very driven, very passionate. She was a postdoc at that time when she was supervising me as a master's student. And a lot of the things that I know now is from her training. She was so dedicated and loved teaching. And she was also one of the people who inspired me and encouraged me to do a PhD. And so even to date, I think of her as one of the key people who pushed me to progress in science. And then I went on to do a PhD, and I switched fields a little. So coming from a molecular biology background, I switched to more systems, computational biology for my PhD. And that was quite a steep learning curve, but a challenge nevertheless. And I moved to Germany and partially also to Slovenia to do my PhD. And again, it was a fantastic experience, experiencing a new country, new lab, a new field of science. And after my PhD, I went on to do 2 postdocs. So my first postdoc was closer to home. I moved back to Oman, and I spent some time there at the university and did my first postdoc, again in breast cancer biology. And then I moved to Qatar here for my second postdoc. And I realized that both of my postdocs have been in completely female-led groups and female teams. Didn't choose it consciously, but unconsciously, this is how, this is where I landed up. But I've been very fortunate to have very good female mentors who were so supportive and I think key to my career. Yeah, that's been my journey so far.
Yeah. Wow, thank you for sharing, Adviti. And what really caught my attention there was the importance of teachers and mentors, in particularly our female allies. That really does make a difference, doesn't it? Thank you for sharing. That's very inspiring, and so glad you're here. You went around the globe and now with us. Let us
Thank you.
now hear. Yeah, wonderful. Let us now hear from Bori. Bori, please tell us a little bit about your journey.
Yeah, I will tell you in a second, but I just wanted to say that it's so nice to see that already there are so many similarities between our stories that hopefully it will, grow over this evening. Well, my story actually started probably already with my family, because my family was very supportive, and we really grew up with the sense that you can be whatever you want to be, right? And that's a very nice thing. And seeing my mom, for example, changing, she was an architect when she finished the university, and then she decided, I want to be a teacher. And then she just became a teacher and was teaching children with disabilities. So it was very nice to see that, you know, this can happen. And the other person was my father, of course, because he was a mathematician, so a scientist in the family already. And I could see his passion for science, which was very nice, even though actually I always said I never wanted to be a mathematician because of him, because somehow I didn't feel like, I don't know, competing in the same field as him, probably. I'm not sure what was the reason for that. But I always thought that science is probably a good path for me. And then I loved biology and chemistry in high school. So my first choice actually was to start and study chemistry at the university. And then after maybe half a year, I realized that this is not really what I want to spend my life with. So then I changed to biology, and I think I really made a good choice there because I really love that field. And yeah, I did my university in Budapest, where I'm from. And I was really lucky because there were many female professors at the university. So I had some good role models already at university. I think it's not the same in every subject, but at least biology was was like this already at the time when I was studying. And then during university, I also had a few very good mentors who were just the discussions with them helped a lot shaping my scientific career. And actually, it was one of their suggestions that I should maybe try and do my PhD in Vienna in the Institute of Molecular Pathology, where I started my career with my favorite topics, which is epigenetics. And I did go there. It was a few tough years. And then from there, I moved on to do my postdoc in the UK. And I actually switched fields. And just as Adviti did, I also moved into bioinformatics. So it was, again, as you said, a very steep learning curve. But I was very lucky, again, to be in a lab that was probably, well, it was the only lab in the European Bioinformatics Institute that had majority female people in the lab. Probably, again, one of the reasons why I felt so comfortable joining the lab at the time. And yeah, it really helped me grow and just making this change much, much easier. Then I moved and started my own lab in Queen Mary University in London, where I again found some very good mentors who were helping a lot with all the small things, how to navigate in science as a woman. And yeah, 3 years ago, I moved here to Qatar. And again, it is a very nice environment. We are unfortunately only 2 female faculty in my college, so hopefully that will increase with time, but it's a very supporting environment. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Bori, for sharing. And also thank you for being so open about sometimes there's steep learning curves because that is the journey. We do need to show ourselves our resilience, but it makes it worth it, doesn't it? Maya, we're now moving to you and we'd love to hear a little bit more about your journey. Over to you.
Thank you. My story is slightly different. So my passion to science dates back to my school days, my childhood, where I would look at the sky at night. I'd want to understand more about the universe, you know, being at home, the things I have around me, and science had the answers to it all, specifically physics. That's why I majored in physics. But my journey into research started when I was doing my master's at the American University of Beirut with 5 other girls. We were 6 female, pure female class, 100%. I finished my courses during my 2nd year and started doing research. I took the 3rd year, a full year, to work on my research project and other projects as well, where I was hired as a research assistant. I had a great mentor at that time, and I knew that I wanted to pursue a career in research. So upon graduation, three of my classmates went straight into their PhD. I didn't, not because PhD was not on the table, but we all have different circumstances, and we make choices. My choice was family and career, not family over career, but I was ready to start a family. And I knew that PhD will come eventually. And so I graduated, got married, moved to Qatar, and started my new job at A&M, all within a period of 1 month. Phew, that was a lot in 1 month. I love teaching, being around students, contributing to their learning, 2 years later, I had the first of my two blessings, my daughter Elena. And then a year after that, I needed that spark in my career. I felt that something is missing. And I knew then that I have to resume my research activity. I have to start this again. It was the time for that. But being in Qatar, it's slightly challenging looking for PhD programs or doing research given the limited options. The good thing is that I had full support from my husband till the moment, and I couldn't have done it without him. He pushed for it. And so I reached out to a colleague in the science program. He was a colleague and he became my research mentor that I'm really grateful for. Professor Othman Bouhali, who's a professor of physics in the science program. I'd like to name him and thank him for not only him welcoming me into his research team, but supporting me throughout till now. And so when I asked him for that, he was very welcoming. And I have to mention that this was a switch for me because during my master's, it was more of experimental physics, spending long hours in the lab. And this time I didn't have it. When I decided to start again, given that I have a family and I have my teaching job, I don't have all these hours to spend in the lab. So I had to adapt and to choose to go to computational physics, which is more like programming, simulation. I have my laptop with me. I can do it anywhere, anytime, wake up at night, 3 a.m. in the morning. I don't have to be in the lab waiting for the data, so it was easier for me. And so this is how the journey with him started while teaching at Texas A&M. It started big at CERN, the largest lab in the world, a big collaboration where you have thousands of scientists and engineers, hundreds of institutions. It was like a dream come true. And then a few years later, we decided to focus on the medical applications of high energy physics and to go into more the medical physics / biomedical engineering field. And then another challenge was how to find a PhD program, given that I'm based in Qatar, so I have to do it remotely. So we started the search. It wasn't easy, to find a strong group in this field, that's one, and two, to be able to do it remotely. And so it happened 3 years ago that we were able to, and I was able to enroll in a PhD program, working with a strong group. And here I am now. What I want to say is I couldn't have done it without the support of my husband and the mentors that I had, and it's never too late.
Wonderful. Thank you, Maya. That is very inspiring. And particularly, I think what's so poignant about your story is this connection between being a parent and a professional. It doesn't have to be either or. It is challenging, but you certainly have shown that it is possible. And also the challenges with sometimes being in remote locations. That's certainly something that you've also overcome, and that's very inspiring to hear. Thank you for sharing that. So we're now going to turn to Angela. Angela, please tell us a little bit more about your journey. I'm really curious to hear more.
Thanks, Cecile. I would say I have a winding, twisting road of a journey, but it's also not over yet. So when I was young, I saw a lot of the gender imbalances in my family. My father and my cousins and my brother, they were all engineers and scientists. And I did not want to do that. I wanted to be on the opposite side of them because I wanted to find my own path. It was difficult with my grandmother and my aunt. They're always like, cook, clean, do this, do that. But my parents really stressed my own education. And for anyone who knows me now, they know how much I love education and just all the learning opportunities, but I actually didn't want to go to college. I really loved volunteering, and I just wanted to volunteer for the rest of my life. And so it was, my parents made me go to engineering, and I'm really glad or go to college, and I'm really glad they did, because I really found the intersections of what I wanted to do in engineering. So I studied civil and environmental engineering and biomedical engineering, to do water sanitation, medical devices, and I ended up working all over the world with startups and nonprofits and research centers, and different universities working on microbiology for water sanitation, early childhood education. I did a lot of disaster and pandemic response back in 2018. And so when I was looking back at my resume in preparation of this, I was laughing to myself and I was like, oh, I forgot I did all of this, because I just saw a need for the human condition. And so I've always wanted to work with different populations. So I worked with babies in water and sanitation, with women in their reproductive, maternal, newborn, and childhood health, with environmental health disparities and impacts, resiliency, community disaster preparedness, and with a lot of different innovations. So I'm still young and I'm still figuring it all out, which is kind of the cool part, like knowing that like your career is not necessarily one career for the rest of your life, but you can find the intersections and the collaborations in everything that you do. I would say with a lot of my work, I've worked all over the world, and in many different cultures, where there's a lot of different gender imbalances. So I've worked on teams in the Democratic Republic of Congo that were all male except for me. And I've learned a lot from every single team that I have ever worked with. And I now work in an amazing community where so many women are leaders. So I'm so grateful to be here today. Thank you for inviting me, Cecile.
Wonderful, Angela. We're so glad to have you. And it's really such a delight to see and hear how enthusiastic you are about your journey still continuing. That's really something that I think all of us that we've heard tonight can talk about, is this ongoing story that keeps on unfolding. There's never an end. And I think that's what the passion is that I'm hearing in everybody's story tonight, is that there's something inside that just keeps on pulling us forward. And so thank you for sharing that, Angela. And also thank you for pointing out it doesn't have to be a traditional path. We can get our learning through experience and volunteer. And it's never too late to return to all sorts of opportunities that can enhance our appreciation of the world. And yeah, thereby learning more about science, but also about people. So thank you for sharing that. That is just so exciting, everyone, that we can see the similarities about our stories. And I look forward to now really hearing a little bit more about what each and every one of you have gone through in terms of specific topics. So we're first of all going to look at some challenges, and some of our panelists are going to tell us a little bit about what was hard. It hasn't all been rosy. We've heard really positive stories so far, but it's important to raise awareness about things that might be a little bit harder. So we're going to talk about some challenges. we're going to look at things that might have changed in terms of the climates that we've been in terms of differences over time. We're going to talk about some ideas to improve. How can we ultimately improve this experience of women in science? And we're going to end by talking about tips and advice that we want to offer those of us who are still in science and those young ones who are on the journey and want to stay within this enterprise. So, as we start with our discussions, I'm going to call on our different panelists, and we will start with our first question. And our first question that the panelists will address is, what are some challenges that you have faced along the way? And the first panelist to address that will be Bori. After that, we'll go to Maya, and then we'll go to Selma. But we'll start off by hearing from Bori right now. Thanks, Bori.
Thanks. Yeah, challenges. I think I already mentioned that there were some during my path, but I think one of the biggest challenges, and Maya will be able to kind of talk about it even more, what is really juggling family life with work. And the whole thing actually started while I was just expecting my son, because that was exactly the time when I was finishing my postdoc and I was supposed to search for a new job. And it's not easy, I have to say, when you go to an interview and there is no clear rules. What do you do? Do you tell your future employee that, by the way, in 5 months' time, I'm actually going to be on maternity leave? or what can you do there? And that was very difficult. And given that my postdoc mentor, he was a male person, he couldn't really give any advice on that fight, and I really found myself a little bit lost. What was very nice that actually in the university where I applied, I found two amazing women professors who were very good in terms of sharing their experience. I felt open, that I could be open with them and discuss this issue with them. So that helped a lot when I was applying for my job. And yeah, of course, that kind of juggle continues after the baby is born, right? So I love my son to bits, and really I would like to spend as much time with him as possible, but you have to also do all the things that job requires. So I really think that I could not do it unless just because my husband is really, really supportive and taking over, some of the home chores as well, which is amazing. I always admire all the students as well in our university who has to study and do their research and have children at home that they have to take care of. Yeah, I don't want it to sound like that it's always just family that makes life challenging in science, but that's definitely one of the big parts of being a woman in science. Another kind of challenge was really when I joined the bioinformatics field. That was moving from this nice environment of biology where I did have my role models of women professors at university. I really found myself in environments where many times I was the only woman in the room, in the conference, in the wherever I was. And that again is quite challenging, but something that we can kind of learn to deal with, I guess. I think.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for sharing, Bori. That sounds, I think, Most of us who have gone down that road have experienced parts of that as well. And it's good to hear that there's a shared experience, but also that those are the themes that we do need to address as we move forward so that we can help to create better pathways for women, particularly in those situations. Thank you for sharing that. Maya, I'm curious to hear a little bit more about the challenges you faced or perhaps that you've seen others face. Please share with us.
Sure. And I'd like to add at the end of each challenge a small takeaway message for especially for junior scientists or those who would like to pursue their career in research and science. So first and foremost, it's what others call the work-life balance. To me, it was work, research, life balance, because work was mainly teaching to me. I had the research as well together with family. And juggling priorities without dropping the ball. And one thing that I learned is it's okay if we drop few balls. Probably we can pick the rubber ones, not the glass ones to drop. But for a perfectionist like me, it wasn't easy to make this choice and to come to terms that we can't do everything. And especially now with this virus and the pandemic, the virus threw us all into the deep water. We had even extra tasks to do, the homeschooling. Luckily, my husband was helping with that, but still, given someone who has a full schedule, adding to that. So sometimes I think, would it be possible for the Earth to take few more hours while it's completing the rotation on its axis? Just cracking a physics joke. So 24 hours in a day were never enough. The second challenge was working remotely. Ironically, here the virus helped because given the fact that everything switched to virtual, whether it's small departmental meetings, where I'm doing my PhD or going to big conferences, it all went virtual. So you can access all these from the comfort of your home without having to separate from family. So working remotely was not easy, despite having one of my mentors here. But I have to say that science is a collective endeavor. We can't do science on our own. It's very important to ask for help whenever we feel that we need help. We're not supposed to repeat things that others did. We're supposed to build upon what others did, and this is how science can advance. That's why working remotely was not easy. Being in a group asking for help is always easier. So my second takeaway message is ask for help. Don't try to deal with things on your own, especially when you are stuck. And the third challenge, which is sort of related to the first two, is physics related to it's the momentum. It was hard to keep up the momentum sometimes. It gets busy at work, with family at home. Sometimes you're tired and you come and think, why am I doing that? Like, I have a good job, I have my family. Do I have to go into this? And this is where the passion kicks in, the self-motivation, the self-discipline, which puts you back on track. And this is my third takeaway message. When you want to pursue a career in research or science, make sure you love that. Pick something that you love so that you can keep yourself on track when things don't, when it gets too overwhelming. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Maya. And I love your words, this collective endeavor. There's so much to that. Thank you for sharing that word for us and all the three takeaways. We're going to remember that. And your metaphors. How cool was that? Very creative. Thank you for sharing that. We're now going to hear from Selma. Selma, we'd like to hear any challenges that you faced or that you've seen others face in the journey into science.
Thank you, Cecile. So yeah, I mean, a career in the sciences it's been a long journey, and of course it's filled with challenges. We have challenges every day. So I had to think a little bit before picking one. I wanted to just focus on one. And so this goes back to the time I was a PhD student, and it was my third year in France. It's 3 years, the PhD at the time at least. And so I needed to extend my thesis. I needed another 6 months, which meant I needed to kind of find ways to finance myself for this additional time. I was in the middle of preparing for my wedding, and you know how that goes. Pick the dress, argue about the music, and argue about all sorts of things with everyone. What else was going on? I wanted to get teaching experience because I was getting to the end of the PhD. So anticipating applying for jobs, I needed to be doing that. And on top of that, my fiance had gotten a job in another country and left me alone there in my last year of my PhD. And then not seeing the whole thing come in, I wake up in the middle of the night and I just can't breathe. So I was essentially having a panic attack. So I managed to call my neighbor and friend, and she came to stay with me. And then I resisted it, and I thought, yeah, okay, it's nothing. Of course, it's not nothing. And it happened again, and it happened again, and it happened again, until finally I decided, okay, I need to do something about it, and opened up with my friend, opened up to my mother, who was, of course, I was alone in a country with no family around. And then it was a journey that I had to go through, basically, to therapy and well-being and meditation and all sorts of things to get through this. And so I just wanted to share, because I know these things here are difficult to share, and difficult also sometimes for our students to really embrace it when it happens. It happens, and so it's part of us. And I think it just makes us human to go through it, and we learn. So for me, I learned through that yes, I was ambitious, and we want it all, but yeah, we need to stop sometimes and just think it can't happen all at the same time. Something has to give in, but also it doesn't mean that it's lost or gone, that it can happen later, and it's okay, basically. So I think, just as a takeaway, again, sharing is it's okay to seek help, and it's okay to not feel well. And the good news is we can get over it, and we can continue to be successful and doing what we want to do.
Yeah. Yeah, wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that, Selma. It's so encouraging to hear and to see that it is truly as you aimed it, is that it's about learning some strategies, learning to get to know ourselves, where our different kind of our capacities are, our skills are, our different needs are, the different seasons. And sometimes all of us are very driven and achievement oriented. And with all of that, that's a wonderful trait, but it can also bring an extra responsibility to take care of ourselves. And we can easily get to a place where we need additional support and learn strategies so that we can navigate ourselves through that. And I think many of us personally have had experiences where we had to learn, how do we do this now when we feel overwhelmed or mental health concerns kick in? It is a normal part of discovering how to navigate a very difficult and tricky and complex life. So thank you for sharing that and for showing us how we can successfully work through that and still have a rewarding career, regardless and with all of that. Thank you for that. Now we're going to hear from Angela. Angela will tell us a little bit about some differences that she's noticed in the work climate, perhaps that she's part of, or perhaps that she's noticed or heard from others, just in terms of how it relates to women in science, particularly how things were and perhaps how things are now. Angela, please share with us a few thoughts.
Hi, everyone. When I was at Carnegie Mellon, I studied engineering, and I studied civil and environmental engineering, which is a lot more men in my classes than I would have liked. And so a couple years back, Carnegie Mellon went through this huge, Carnegie Mellon in Pittsburgh had a huge milestone where they had admitted more female than male students for the first time ever. And it was just, I just remember how legendary it was because they had to change all male dorms to all female dorms or mixed dorms because there just wasn't, we haven't had this space before, right? Like you look at our buildings and you're like, why are there more men's bathrooms than women's bathrooms? And so it's really cool to see now, right? Like how all of that has been changing. And I know it's not as much of a change as many years before, but I have really benefited a lot from all of the females before me who have also pushed their way forward. So, and I feel that I have always been very lucky. My elementary school principal was a female. My 2 high school chemistry teachers were female. And so I've always been surrounded by empowering women in my life. And it's amazing watching history being made with more and more women in leadership positions. I was reflecting back recently on my past couple of supervisors, and I realized the last 5 supervisors I've had were all women. And that to me is just absolutely amazing. I also think because of the women who came before me, right? They have also made my job easier. Watching the documentary last night, Picture a Scientist, it brought up a lot of feelings for me when, right, the woman was saying, oh, didn't you notice he was doing this thing, like I could take it, but no one else had stood up for her at that point. And I am so lucky to be in a place where we have a lot of conversations, right? We have a lot of mentorship opportunities. We have this great event going on right now where we elevate women in our careers, in our workplaces, and that we also are able to have these honest and truthful conversations. And I think that's what I really love about doing this work is that we're able to be open and transparent with our coworkers, which I also have a lot of female coworkers now, which really helps from the time when I was in the DRC and I had all male coworkers. But I'm really excited and proud of where we are now and where we have come from, because we live in an age of speaking our truth and standing up for what we believe in. And I believe that it has made my career easier. It has made me more likely and eager and comfortable with speaking up, so I can also make the women who come after me, their careers easier as well.
Wonderful. Thank you, Angela. That is so great to hear that your experience certainly tells of the representation that has changed over time. And that is very hopeful. And thank you for bringing that to our attention. And that's why we're here for, right? That's what we're going to continue to do. So thanks for sharing that. We're going to now turn towards what we can do to improve our experience of women in science. And our first panelist will be Adviti. She'll share with us a few thoughts, then we'll hear from Maya, then we'll hear from Salma. Adviti, please tell us a little bit more about what thoughts and ideas do you have and some suggestions about how we can improve the experience of women in science. Over to you.
Thanks, Cecile. I think the environment in academia needs to be more welcoming for all women in science. And I think the first thing that all academic institutions or organizations need to do is champion diversity, inclusion, and representation of women. And this could be on panels, committees, conferences that they host, projects as well. When you let women feel that they're included and part of the big picture, that's when you see so much more creativity, productivity, and different views and ideas. You know, it adds to the color of the picture. And I think also a lot of women, like what Angela has said, have already done so much work to improve our our experience in science, and so many legalities have been dealt with that we can go into work and feel that we are being treated as equal. But sometimes I think what is missing is how do we deal with the unconscious bias at work? And these are things that laws cannot put in place. It is something that only awareness, within the work environment can deal with these issues. And so raising awareness at workplaces is so important. And I think something that could really help in this is including diversity trainings at induction programs, for example, when employees join workplaces, and you could address issues such as microaggression or inappropriate comments, or how to steer difficult situations. How do you deal with unconscious bias at work? And I think just talking about these things helps a great deal to solve the issue. So definitely unconscious bias needs to be addressed at workplaces. I think the second thing that needs to be done is that we need more female scientists as role models to be portrayed and represented in media, in social media, at career talks, at school talks, perhaps, because when you see it, you believe it. When you have those role models, you think, oh, okay, this is also possible given their circumstances. I mean, we had such wonderful stories where people shared their challenges, and these are challenges that many women don't talk about, and we all experience it, and we all go through the same journey. So I love it that we have a session like this where everyone can be so open, and I'm sure there are a lot of attendees listening to us thinking, this is exactly what I've been going through. I mean, it's validating that you're not the only one. So I think these are the two main things that I'd like to talk about.
Thank you so much, Adviti. I really like, if you see it, you can be it. It's so important to raise awareness because we have these normal cognitive processes that we just have inherent biases, right? So it's on a very, very subtle level that we need to increase awareness so we can address these important issues that are not necessarily addressed by laws and policies. You're absolutely right. Thanks for sharing that. We'll now hear a little bit more from Maya. Maya, tell us about ideas you have about improving the experience of women in science.
So I second what Adviti mentioned about the workplace and things that we can implement or have. But I would like to have a more fundamental approach and say that it has to start from individuals first. And then we'll look at, systems, companies, universities, because I've seen it a lot, irrespective of gender, how sometimes there's no support, and what is shocking sometimes, seeing other women being not supportive at all to other women. you know. And this goes back to something that Adviti mentioned, the implicit bias. It's very important to recognize and quantify this bias so we can address it. And the movie picture of a scientist, I'm very glad we were given the opportunity to watch the movie. And I really recommend it. The stories are really eye-opening, you know, and very interesting. It's very important for others to watch the movie. The social psychologist, I think her name was Mazarian Banaji in Cambridge. She said the sentence that that is still ringing in my head. I ought to be able to associate female and male equally with science, you know. And she said, and I'm a woman in science, you know. So it's very important to recognize that this implicit bias exists, not because we want it, it's not intentional, but this is how the society was feeding the people, you know. We are creatures of our environment. So it's important to recognize, quantify, and address this implicit bias starting from us as individuals, and then extending, I think, to institutions or, you know, systems and so.
Wonderful. Thank you, Maya, for that very important reminder, starting with ourselves and the individuals around us. Wonderful. Salma, please share with us some ideas you have about improvements we can make.
Thank you, Cecile. I second everything that was said so far, and I had a few points, and I think one I'd like to bring to add to the conversation isn't really about me, but about our students and students in science. In this environment, and I'd like to call on the family support. I think this is really key for women to be able to continue their journey and do what they want. So I'll take an example. We send our students in the summer for exchange to the main campus in Pittsburgh, and I really thank all the fathers and the brothers and the uncles who traveled with the students and they go there and they spend 6-7 weeks so that the daughter, the sister, and the niece can go to that research lab for biological sciences, or can take these advanced courses that they wanted to take. And so it's just an example of being creative within the culture and the societal norms where we are, so that we continue to support women who want to do more or to do things that are slightly different from what is accepted or acceptable here, because there's always a way. And so if we can continue to have conversations with the parents, with the families, so that our students can do everything they wish to do.
Fantastic. That is so important to remember. We're part of a system, and the entire system needs to support us. And how wonderful that we have seen that already, and here the success stories of opportunities where that was enabled for students by their families. So that's so important. And now we're going to turn towards some tips and advice that we want to continue to share with you all. But in particular, we want to focus on our young future females and even our male scientists. We all need to contribute together as we support this cause. And we're going to hear first from Adviti, and then and then we're going to hear from Angela. So just a couple of thoughts from each of you about some tips or advice that you can add to the improvements that we've already heard about. Adviti, please go for it.
So I'd like to give two main tips. So the first one is nurture your curiosity. And this is really important. Don't be afraid to ask questions, however silly they might sound in your mind. I think good science is always about asking the simplest questions, but the right questions. And so don't have that fear that, oh, I might not sound clever enough. And I think as women, sometimes, we have this imposter syndrome that, oh, am I asking the silly question in the group? So yeah, so gather that courage, however naive or simple the question might be, ask, because I think that is really important in science. And I think as at academic institutions and within groups or teams, or even at home, within the family, I think it's important to create that atmosphere that is welcoming to curiosity. Allow your girls, your women, to ask questions, to raise questions. Don't take things on the face value. I think this is really important. And the second thing is, don't be afraid to be yourself. And I think, again, this is something that a lot of women struggle with, inferiority issues. And I think the very traits that society deems as female vulnerabilities, like empathy, humility, or intuition, I think these are our biggest strengths, and when we are able to use these strengths and focus them, I think female leadership can reach really great heights and build teams that are so productive, but also closely bound to each other, and I think this is something that women bring to the table that is very unique. So, be true to yourself, and I think that helps a long way in pursuing your dreams.
Wonderful. Curiosity and be yourself. Real gems to remember. Thank you, Adviti. Bori, share with us a couple of tips from your side.
I think I really have one tip that is, I think, very useful. And it's to build a strong kind of network of other women scientists, your peers. I know mentorship is also important, and it's good if also if you have female mentors, but sometimes it just doesn't happen. But nowadays, at least, students, there are enough other women around you, so you can connect with them and try to go through the experience together, because I know that without my friends from my postdoc lab, my friends from PhD, who are all going through the same things and have the same challenges, and we can just discuss what they have done in a similar situation, it would have been so much more difficult for me to manage some of the challenges that I face. So I think having a group of other women scientists around you is very important.
Absolutely. Thank you, Bori. If I think back of the MIT report that the Picture of Scientists talks about, that really testifies to the power of joining forces. One woman may start it, but when we get together, there is certainly power in supporting each other and adding our collective voice to create some real strong momentum. So thanks for that reminder. That's so wonderful and helpful. Angela, we'd like to hear, do you have a tip or some advice you would like to share with our community?
Yeah, I would like to echo Bori's point about creating this community of support, but also just say, ask for mentors. I tell people all the time, I think you're great. I want you to be my mentor. It doesn't work out all the time, but I have a lot of mentors, and I'm always learning and I'm always growing. And so one mentor can say something and another mentor can say something else, but then you have differences to learn and grow from that can also challenge you in different ways. Something else that I've also done a lot is make a matrix of what was important to me, especially for, right, like what I wanted in a new job. So for me, I wanted a growth opportunity. I wanted a good supervisor. I wanted a community, right? Like it is very important to love what you are doing, but besides the job function itself, I also wanted to be happy in my work-life balance outside of work. And so that making a matrix really helped me, because I was tired of working for people who didn't support me, who didn't push me to be the best that I could be. And I would say, if you're not job hunting, right, still make that list. Use that matrix to check on yourself, right? Like, are you working out enough? Enough being how much you want to work out. Are you getting enough time to yourself, right? Like, this is a standard that you should hold yourself to every single year to keep accountable for. And I would say my last piece of advice is, you don't have to stay at a job that doesn't respect you. I've had 7 jobs in the last couple of years, which is a lot of jobs. But I've also never been happier than I am right now, right? Like, I made my matrix and I said, this is what I want. And I am learning and growing. And this isn't, right, like, my job now is not strictly humanitarian aid engineering, like I studied my entire life, but you can make your own opportunities if you have the supervisors, if you have the community that will help you grow and learn and support you.
Fantastic, Angela. We can just hear that strength that you have, which comes from doing the hard work to really spend some time with yourself and creating that matrix and finding out what do you value and what's important to you. And for us, being on this journey and in these labs, we are being pulled in many different directions. And we constantly need to check in with ourselves of, are we firmly planted and grounded in what's important to us? Otherwise, we will be pushed and pulled in different directions. So thank you for that. That's very, very encouraging. And also, yes, if things don't work, we have to make a change until so that it can suit us. That is so important. Thanks for that inspiration. So we're actually now going to turn over to our Q&A time. And we want to invite all of you to type a question or two in the question and chat function for us. We are not seeing any questions quite yet. So what we're going to do is we're going to respond to one other question that I'll ask the panelists while some of you type. So you're welcome to type away, and we'll keep our eye on that. And as soon as there's a question that pops up, we will certainly reach back and address your question. So while you type, panelists, I'm wondering if somebody else wants to share with us a little bit more about either an improvement or a tip that has occurred to you while we were talking. Does anyone else want to add something about what we can do to improve, or a tip or advice that you want to share with young women or our current women in science? Anyone else have something else you want to share? You can also ask Annette if you want to share something. You're welcome. And we also have a question now, which is wonderful. Go for it, Annette.
Thanks, Cecile. So we have a question now in chat, but before we start that, there were a couple of questions that came in through the survey form that I think everybody, as they shared their journeys, covered most of it. But there was one question that I think didn't quite get the attention, and I thought I'll ask that. So one of the participants actually wanted to know, what do you wish you were told through your journey at the start, in the middle, that could have made your journey a bit more comfortable? Anybody wants to take that? Some.
That I can do it. Yeah, I mean, I know it sounds silly, but yeah, it's maybe again that's imposter syndrome. The basically always doubt yourself, and to 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 hear from others that you can do it, you can get there. Yes, the journey looks long and such, but also it doesn't all happen at once, and you can just go step by step, and each step in the ladder is just getting you closer to where you want to be.
Thank you, Salma. Is there anybody else who wants to share? If not, then we'll go on to the next question. So this is a question from the attendee at the webinar today. How do you understand that the particular stream or field of science is the one for you? Angela.
So I'll answer that given I've had many different fields. You have to just try it. You can, right? Like when I was networking, I messaged a ton of people off LinkedIn, cold calling, cold Zooming them, right? Like trying to understand what their day-to-day was like. I don't think job descriptions were always the most accurate rather than just talking to someone at a company. But for me, what was best is for me to actually do some of that work. So if it was just volunteering, just consulting for a couple of months, like I took a lot of consulting jobs in the last couple of years before I settled down, because I needed to figure out what I liked and what I didn't like about everything I was doing.
Thank you, Angela. Anybody else wants to share? Go ahead, Maya.
Yeah, I'd like to say the same. It's very important to try, and this is something that I did before even enrolling in a PhD program. It doesn't have to be a fixed timing, like a year or two or a few months. Just give it a try first. I mean, for me, it was a bit longer because I was looking for a PhD program, and I had to find one with, specific conditions and constraints. But it's important for you to try. I mean, you don't have the answers to it all, right?
Thank you, Maya. So another question, what are the actions that others took that made you feel welcomed in your new role or in the new place that you were working? We'll do Adviti, then Angela.
I think this is a really important point, and I'd like to take an instance from my PhD. So when I switched fields and I took up this PhD in systems biology, I was the only woman in a lab of 10 other men. And of course, it was starting a new field and moving to a new country, a new environment, and then having this imposter syndrome of being the only woman in the lab. And I was really intimidated when I started, and I think that fear was in my mind, and I think my peers probably they felt that, I mean, we have to make her feel more comfortable, and this is when a supportive environment really is so important, because they started initiating the communication, and they would invite me to go on treks or doing outdoor stuff together apart from work. So you get to know each other, that you don't feel it's just a professional formal relationship. You bond as a team, and that helps you get out of that fear that or those insecurities that you nurture in your mind. And I suffered from that imposter syndrome for a very, very long time, because it was a very steep learning curve for me, and also not being able to talk to another woman about what I was experiencing. So I know it's not always the case that you have a supportive environment, but when you do, I think it's important that you convey what you're feeling, and so that the others realize that, and try to help out in a way they can.
Angela?
I would really echo everything Adviti was saying, and also just talk about, right, like in meetings, right, like I get there's the point of this meeting could have been an email, right? Like if you just do all the tasks, but I like to start a lot of my meetings, right, with getting to know that person, right? Developing a better, not better, but like a more personal relationship. And I think, right, like that's when my supervisors, when my coworkers, right, really get to learn about me, especially in a world of Zoom, when it's you can't just run into people randomly. Just getting to talk about for a moment or two, right, like instead of how are you, good, and like that's the end of the conversation, you dig in, right? You really get to know them, their families, what they do outside of work, and you build this relationship which helps in the long run with trust and sense of openness and transparency, so you can feel comfortable with going to them later on in case anything happens.
Great, thank you. Bori, I thought I saw your hand go up for that question. Would you like to share?
Yes, it did. I mean, I think on the personal side, both Adviti and Angela has really nicely described what can be done and what's very useful when you are joining a new job. But I think apart from that, also just, you know, the small tricks of the job. If you enter a new place, then people who are already there, they already know that, oh, getting the paper for the printer, you need to get it from there. And then if you have to, you know, find out these things all yourself, you feel really left alone. While if people just give you this kind of small advice, it can really help with the process of joining a new place, getting to know where the notepads are, right? It's very important.
Great. I wanted to ask, this is not in order of the questions, but I think it's a very important question to ask our panelists today. What are things males in education can do to encourage and support female students and colleagues in their journeys? Anybody would like to share? Bori?
Yes, I will continue then, because we have all said that we have this kind of imposter syndrome at some point of our life or for a longer period in our lives, and it's, I think, very true for most women. And that's something that just males should be aware of, that we do feel like that. And while you can have some kind of banter with some of your male colleagues, it would probably come off differently if you did the same with your female colleagues. So it's, I think, what mostly helps if they try to put them in a position where they would feel insecure in a certain situation, and treat female students and colleagues knowing that that might be the situation.
Salma?
Well, I would say first to forget that they are women, and second to never forget that they are women. So forget they are women, because in the end, at least when we talk about science, it's about the science, it's about the research, it's about what they are doing and what we are all doing in that lab or for that project or working together. And yeah, it doesn't matter who's who, and that goes back to the unconscious bias. And I would say everyone really consistently, our administrations should be doing this repeatedly and training on unconscious bias, because it is there and then it needs to be forgotten, really, and this whole thing. And then not to forget that they are women, because yeah, I mean, we shared all very candidly, you know, having kids and having families and juggling this and that, juggling that. Unfortunately, we are still in a world where a lot of it is for the women to bear. And it should not be that way. Everything should be shared. I think in another conversation I shared that as far as I'm concerned, my husband has been the most wonderful, supportive individual that I was lucky to meet. But I know it's not the case for everyone. And so, yeah, so if supervisors can not be too rigid about, okay, when to schedule the courses of a colleague, because late is too late and too early for school pickups and things. And so there is a lot that can be done to support women in the workplace, and we need to continue to do it.
Thank you, Salma. So the last question, I know Maya wants to take this. So Maya, how do you make yourself motivated all the time? That's a tough one. Maya, could you unmute?
Yeah. It is. So my simple answer is you don't have to be motivated all the time. Give yourself this break. You can feel tired, uh, you can feel that you need just to be away. It doesn't have to be all the time motivation, but if it's something that you're studying or if it's career related, you should have this motivation most of the time. And I think um, if you pick a subject that you have passion for, that you love, the motivation will come. It will come naturally. You don't need to put in a lot of effort to feel motivated. But again, it's important to take it easy and not. You don't need to be all the time motivated. That's my simple answer.
Great. And with that, we've answered all the questions. So over to you, Cecile.
Yes. Oh, I am so I'm so thrilled, and I can even see some of our panelists are also still wanting to contribute because we want to just keep on going. This is really a wonderful space to be in now and really unpack some of those deeper questions. So we would love you to continue to hold on to those questions and perhaps reach out to some of your colleagues and create some small group discussions where you can talk more about this. Reach out to some of your senior colleagues, particularly some of your female mentors and allies, and do continue this conversation because we have now just kind of touched the tip of the iceberg, and there's so much more that we would like to share, but also want you to discover on this journey going forward. So we want to thank you for this wonderful opportunity again that you joined us so that we can talk with you and hear your questions, and that we could talk amongst ourselves. We need to give a big round of applause to our panelists for sharing candidly, enthusiastically, positively, and so confidently about your journeys. And we wish you all the best as you continue to really shine and really live those beautiful, multifaceted lives that all of you have. So thank you for that. And thank you, Annette, for creating this fantastic space. And we look forward to another opportunity to continue where we've left off today. Thank you all. We wish you a wonderful Thursday night and possibly a walk underneath the stars. Thank you, everyone.